let's start with the first question. To our lovely Karen Wakoli. From your daily service to humanity, you think, you dream, you see, you imagine leadership. From mentorship, storytelling, and transformation. So please tell us, what's your most profound, honest lesson you have learned along the way with women, either as you mentor them or as you meet those who are already in leadership? What's that one lesson that stands out for you and you can share with the rest of us?
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. And before I respond to your question, please just allow me to do one thing.
Yes, it's okay.
I walked into the room and I saw someone. This someone was so influential in my life when I was in high school. Imagine, my teacher. She is here. And I went to hug her so closely. She's right there, Mrs. Anyanga. Please let's appreciate her. I love her so much. She impacted my life in high school. So, back to the question about one of the greatest lessons I've learned about leadership. Yes. I've learned so many lessons in leadership, but I feel like the core of it all is and has been that the state of well-being of a leader determines the quality of their leadership. How we are, part of our the theme for the meeting today has an aspect of holistic leadership development and engagement. How whole are we? Are we and just from the questions asked in the room about the barriers to women's engagement on boards and all that, elements of either trauma, brokenness, or people talking down on us, or things like those that then get to affect how effective we are, get to seep in. So for me, I realized that for me to be an effective leader, and I've also looked at other leaders, those who are effective, efficient, authentic, are people who've done the inner work. Have you taken a step back to just be courageous enough and look at yourself in the mirror and say, this is me, this is my story, this is where I have come from, these are the traumas I carry, this is what has put me down, and I need to take the step to actually just heal me. A lot of, many years ago, maybe 5 or so years ago, I used to struggle quite a bit with burnout and fatigue. Till time came and I realized, no, this is not just something on the surface. There's something deeper that I need to dig deep and then get to address. And then I started the inner healing journey, inner work, to just heal me, to become whole, to lead from a place of love and a place of power, to take back my power. And then I realized that, it's actually, it's a peaceful, beautiful, creative space, because survival and leading from a place of brokenness, a place where there's trauma, it's difficult to love on people. It's difficult to extend empathy. It's difficult to even be authentic, because there's some insecurities that we face, that we feel that maybe when other people look at us or interact with us, that's what they see. But then, can we face ourselves and actually say, this is the journey, I need to heal, to then learn to lead from a place of love and pour from a cup that is overflowing and not from an empty cup. Because again, part of the challenges, the part of the work that we need to do to heal is to then get to a place where we prioritize ourselves, like my friend, I think Susan at our table, talked about. Sometimes when we prioritize ourselves and who we are and loving on us, we feel like it is selfish. But it's okay to be selfish with us, so that we can love on us, and then when we are well, we then do well. But when we are not well, we hurt other people. And I just finalized this with one statement I read some time back, that when we do not heal what cut us or what wounded us, we end up bleeding on other people who never cut us in the first place. And that's why you'd see that in the workspaces, we're stepping on people, we are wounding people, we are causing others to bleed, but they have nothing to do with that. We have to do our inner work as leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's profound. As you said, I remember she's a doctor, I think I follow her online, and there was a time she was narrating one of the incidents at her workplace, and there's a statement she said that I said, that's so profound. She said, if a patient comes and she's hysterical, then it's historical. If it's hysterical, it's historical. So you need to pause. When you have that employee or that person that is always hysterical, then it's historical. So I thought maybe that's something that we can take home. Because no one wakes up in the morning and they're hysterical. There's history. So next to our next panelist, Winnie Rachel. You're driven to see women in leadership, but you want to see them beyond borders. You have opened doors for other women through scholarships and opportunities. But we want you to tell us, they keep making this one common leadership mistake. Even when they have gone through the scholarships, they have the degrees, they have the titles. But there's a recurring mistake that women keep repeating. Please name that mistake for us.
Hi, ladies. Hi. It's great being here and lovely sitting in this platform. Women are looking beautiful. I usually joke about it. That's why men get confused. Yeah, but yeah, ladies, you're looking all beautiful. Allow me to give a background so that I answer that question. At the core of what I do, 8 to 5, I am passionate about driving access to education. And one of the key areas that we look at is women. Under an organization called UNICAF, which most of us have interacted with. And out of the 8 and 5 job, I ran a foundation called the Bo Foundation, which handles wash projects. I mean, I literally went back to the community and dug more than 6 wells in a year in a community where they had never seen water. The first strike of water was the first well that I had hardly dug in that community. I'm going somewhere with that particular conversation, so walk with me. And so one of the mistakes, there are so many, but one of the mistakes in this world, we have so many women being professional students. You are always a student. You are always learning something. You are always in class doing something. What is the impact of what you're doing? How does it help you? It is an exercise in futility to hold so many certificates, but there is no impact of what you're doing. And as women, most of the time also, we really just wait to be chosen. Yeah. So we are in that space where, Oshe, I'm a woman. If you come with that card in any space in leadership, in the current century we are, you are doomed. I usually tell a lot of people, because a lot of people, most of the time when I host a lot of visitors in our organization, they come and ask, so we are here to see the country director. And when they're brought to the office, they're still waiting for the country director. Yeah. Because they cannot imagine that at my age, I am actually sitting in as a country director for an organization. But then when we go back to the basics and start discussing what brought them there, and they're like, oh yeah, we see why you're in that space. So what am I trying to say? For women, we need to be very intentional when we are talking about professional development. And being on Women on Board Network, thank you, Catherine, and the entire team, the founders and all that, because as women, we must be very intentional on what we want to achieve in terms of visibility and where you want to go. Because positioning yourself, most of the time, we look at being liked as opposed to being visible. Because, let me give you an example. Today, one of the times that we saw IShowSpeed, how many heard about IShowSpeed? To be honest, that was the first time I was hearing about it. And my son, when I went home, I thought I had some news to give my son, and he sat me down, took me through IShowSpeed, and I was like, what? You know that guy? Yeah, but I've never seen you watch him. But he's like, Mom, we know these things, they are there. But what am I trying to drive? That IShowSpeed came to Kenya and Ruto stopped his program. President Ruto stopped his program to meet him. That is influence. We have to move from a point where everything we learn is about the certifications we have, but we get to a space where we are able to be identified by what we know and what we do and the impact we create. That today, in this particular room, if we had elections, I believe there are women who have great certifications here. You had somebody with a PhD that she has put behind the curtains. People have qualifications here that if we were to run a country, we can have a president in here, a vice president, an entire cabinet, and all those things you're talking about. But what is the issue? Where did the rain start beating us? We really need to get to a space where we are intentional about the certification we are getting and where they are getting us. So that when somebody mentions about, we are looking for somebody in the cabinet about wealth, mental health, Mkirote, you don't have to think twice. Whose name comes to your head? If it is about counseling, whose name comes to the country's head? So I think as women, let us be very intentional about the number of certifications that we want to take. It's not about being a professional student. It's about aligning yourself and being visible so that when that opportunity comes, you are able to be picked. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. I think I've taken my 2 words from your response. We stop being professional students. Always going to school, you have the papers, you have ticked the boxes, but what's the impact? Who is that one person that said, because of you, I moved from this point to another point? I think that's for me. Professional students, need to get away from that. So next, our next panelist, Susan Kiama. You've been in director positions in aviation and regional trade. You call yourself, or you would want to be identified as someone who is very keen on people and culture and organizations. So please share with us one surprise in your leadership journey, especially as a woman, and you're talking aviation, So aviation is not a very female-dominated sector. So give us that one surprise that you found as a leader, and better still, if it was a good one, how did you make use of it for the betterment of your area of influence? And if it was a bad one, how did you navigate around it?
Thank you, and good afternoon, ladies. It's really a pleasure to be here, unexpectedly, but I'm really happy that I have this opportunity. A surprise. So I've held director positions in different organizations in different sectors and in different continents. The surprise to me, I think, is that it's not as complicated as sometimes it's made to look. It really isn't. If you understand what the organization is doing, why you're there, and the difference you can make, it's not that complicated. I think there's a halo that's put around it. There's it's a mystical kind of place. There's these boards that people go and sit on. And so that was one. But the other one on the other side was that it is a very different place. If you're in management and leadership in an organization as an employee, governance is not the same thing. It isn't doing that better. It is doing something completely different. And therefore that's where the learning was. The other good surprise is just the generosity of people who sit on boards when you come into the board, and the accommodation they can give you to learn to wet your feet. Every community has its way of working. It has its protocols. It has those things that no one really teaches you. It has its etiquette, and being accommodated in that was actually quite good. What have I done with that is tried to, so in aviation particularly, it's an industry I love. I've always loved it. It's something I studied when I was doing my first degree and had to do a project. It was in aviation. And then 20-something years later to be asked to sit on a board of aviation. Highly male-dominated in its visibility. And again, coming to say about what you say about, there are a lot of women engineers, a lot of women in airlines that maybe have not had the recognition, and therefore it seemed to be a very male-dominated space. There's a lot of women, I would call that in heavy industry, because aviation is heavy industry, that again we need to elevate. So how do you make that visible? How do you bring that to the fore? Is providing equitable opportunity. Is being in that space and saying, okay, let's look at all the policies that have been put in place that enable that, and talking about gender equality, gender representation. Let's look at this from a different perspective. When you want to have meetings at a time when women have responsibilities outside the workplace, but they're their responsibilities. So men can have a 6 a.m. call. Let's just get on a call. Women actually then, if you're the caregiver in the home, is saying, I'm preparing people to go to school. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. And that ability to say, no, we won't do it at that time. It doesn't work for this constituent of our stakeholders. So it's really recognizing that you're in a position. It's good to learn, be curious, understand where you are, and then bring yourself to that space. And just to touch on something that about what don't women do, we don't own our spaces. Get in, stand there, 2 feet, even if you're shaking, own the space. Do it scared, do it wrong, do it as you're learning, own the space. Take the space you have, own it, put boundaries around it and say, I am here. And then look for everybody else to help you. Don't say, I'm not going there until I find, no, own it. If you've been given that opportunity, take it, own it, and then call your community of women or friends or men who can help you and say, you know what, I need to stand in this space, but guess what? I am here. Thank you.
Thank you, well put. I think in the religious circles, that's why they say, claim it. Umepewa, chukua. Ama kama ni nyota yako chukua, sio? Okay, so the next question will just be general to all the panelists. You're going to answer just from my immediate right. I would want you to share an aha moment you got that changed your leadership journey. The Eureka moment. I found it. So share with us just one, each one of you, please.
Get people who are better than you at what they do, and do what you need to do. Let go of everything else. Get them to do, give them space, give them support. Let them do what they need to do. Create an environment that allows them to do it. And then you go do your job. Your job is not theirs. Thank you.
Well put.
Wow, that was so succinct. Let's appreciate her. That's amazing. Wow. For me, the Eureka moment, I think, happened about 5 or so years ago. You talked about own your space. I think mine would be own your story, in addition to owning the space. The story, the space, inner leadership, outer influence, and all that. It happened in a village somewhere in Italy, in a fellowship on well-being and wellness. I have been doing youth leadership development work for roughly 23 or so years. And I felt like I knew my purpose, I understood myself, I knew my story, I owned the space, the voice, and all that. Till we were asked to take a face mask and paint the masks we were wearing in the room. And many of us said, no, I am authentic, I am myself, I have no mask. But then we were told, no, just go ahead and paint the mask you are wearing. And we had about an hour, music playing in the background, watercolor, paint, and all that. But even before the 1 hour was over, many people in the room were shedding tears. Because then we had come to moments, face-to-face, a face-to-face moment with ourselves, with our stories. And we realized we actually had masks. So I'd like to pose the question to all of us in the room. Do you have a mask that you're wearing? maybe a mask for strength, power, protection, love, agreeableness. You know, what is that mask? And the most interesting thing is, and this was shocking to learn, that every person took up a mask to wear in childhood. For some, it was to be loved, to be appreciated, to be seen as the stars. And we live all our lives, and all of us were adults. I think the youngest maybe was 30-something, the oldest was about 70. But all of us had these masks we were wearing, and some people are running away from a mask, from a word that a parent said to them as a little girl, as a little boy, never learning that, oh my goodness, there's something holding me back, something so deep. It's not external. Externally, we look so beautiful and awesome, but then if internally we're not whole, oh my goodness, even the outside is just fleeting. It's neither here nor there. After that, so for me, when I then told my story and looked at the mask, I realized that there was something about my story that I was not proud of, that I felt some kind of shame owning that part of my story. And it's about growing up in poverty. And there were injustices around, there are definitely injustices in society around inequalities, disenfranchisement and stuff like that. But I think that poverty had something on me that I would never reach certain heights in life because of the poverty. And then that I wouldn't tell that part of my story, only later to learn that even some of the experiences that are not so good that we go through in life actually help us to find purpose in life. That God works through some of those experiences to give us the passion, whether it's passion for the environment, for children, for women, for governance, for politics, and you know, all that. There's a story, and we all have a story. And I realized that the more I shared my story, the more I owned my story, and the more I even thanked God for my background and realized that I am so keen and so big on matters dignity because I understand what it means. I understand what lack means. I understand what lack of access to education, to this and that means, and I'm so passionate about that. And something else I have learned is that the more I then own my story and get to know me, the more I know God. And the more I know God, the more I know me. The more I know me, the more I own the space and I own the power, I own the voice. And the more I do that, I then realize, oh, okay, I'm creating a legacy. So it actually begins from within to the outside. So that for me was the eureka moment. And I'm also then realizing that I need to create such a safe space for my colleagues at work and the young people that come into our spaces that we can do the inner healing. Because then when we tell our stories, that's part of the healing journey. And we become whole and we become powerful. We take back our power and walk in power. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I'll say one of the aha moments that I learned while going through the strides of leadership is that for you to be a leader is not about gaining power. It's always about giving your power away. And I think in a much deeper perspective, that's why we struggle as women. They said we wear so many hats. So you are a wife, you are a sister, you are a what, all those things. So we find most of the time struggling to even handle our own lives. And at the end of the day, we die inside because of the responsibilities we want to take. But when you bring it in the aspect of getting into the workspace, we are also very keen, like I mentioned first, that we are looking more to be liked more than to make these decisions. And John Maxwell, I think in his book, wrote something that was very impactful. And he said that if people do not have to like you in leadership, they just have to trust your motive. Because at the end of the day, it is the aspect, I will do something and give you influence by me trusting your motive. It may not necessarily be the right decision. I think one of the questions that was asked about ethical when senior counsel was presenting was how then do we make these decisions? And as women, when we get into these spaces, we got to realize that we do not necessarily have to make people happy. They say if you want to make everyone happy, go sell ice cream. Okay? Yeah, but if you have to make decisions, then you will have to ruffle feathers. You will have to cry, make some of these decisions as you cry. So at the end of the day, it is your name at stake. It will be your legacy. I usually ask people, after all is said and done, you know, when they remove the title of country director, UNICAF, so who are you? That is the deepest question you should ask yourself. So you are the so-and-so of this bank. When that title is removed, and somebody said that you see these titles that we hold, you'll get into rooms and you say, I'm so-and-so from this, and it opened doors. But one day when you're off the employment and that title is away, you cannot transact, you cannot do anything. What name, what even the Bible says, a good name is better than. So you will all need as women to understand, and I loved what Catherine presented in the morning. We need to sit down, write our vision and strategic plan. If organizations can take people to Naivasha, to Mombasa, to sit for an entire week just to do a strategic plan, and you think they're wasting money, you need to take yourself on holiday and write your strategic plan for your own self, so that you know where you want to go, where and how. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can hear the passion, the passion in the voice. So I think our facility, we are doing very well with time. We are going to the last bit of the question. So again, it will go to all the panelists, and maybe we'll start from my right. So we would want you to share your favorite quote or gem on people and power. Remember, what's the theme of our conference? People and power. Navigating? Do we even know the theme of the conference? Ama ni lunchtime, njaa imeanza. You know, I'm in communication, we are told hunger is noise. So it could be distracting some of us, but we're just about to finish. So we want the panelists to share with us, what's your favorite quote or gem on people and power? And lastly, is leadership the same as power? And if we took the case of the chicken and egg, yeah, which comes first? Is it leadership, then power? Or is it power, then leadership? So let's see our panelists.
For me, I think neither surpasses the other one, but trust does. Like I mentioned, we are in a better position when we are influential, because that is what will open doors, and that is what will be sustainable at the end, long run. If you look at most women today, I'm so proud that even post-retirement, we are looking at consultancies, we are looking at what we can do, how best we can impact the community. That can only come when you have won the trust of people. Power can be taken away, all right? And when you are in leadership also, you really need clarity at the end of the day, because one of the things that I also noticed sitting in these spaces is that most of the time I've left meetings and thinking that everybody has gotten the concept. And at some point you start asking, were we in the same meeting with everyone? Because leadership is not always about, the responsibility of clarity does not lie with the person you're speaking to, whether it's an employee, it lies with you. So the two are very different in that aspect. And so as I speak about the issue of chicken and egg, I doubt both complement each other. Power gives you a fueling to the next level, gives you authority. People who have watched Game of Thrones, there's a statement that they say, knowledge is power. And then somebody comes and brings an entire entourage that is going to kill this guy. And they told them, power is power. All right? Power is power. The person who sits in Diamond Leisure Lodge, if he says move, we will move. That is power. Okay? When we go back to leadership, it is a whole concept. So for me, I think it complements each other. And my best quotes, let me just read it because I want us to get it right. If your leadership disappears the moment your title disappears, it was never leadership, it was borrowed power.
Please repeat. I can see we need to note this down. Alafu tuende tuweke kwa,
So
we
for
hang
me-
it somewhere in our rooms.
Yeah, so for me, that really sunk. If your leadership disappears the moment your title disappears, it was never leadership, it was borrowed power.
Profound. Let's go to the next panelist. Thank you so much.
For me, so between leadership and power, which one comes first? When we get to know who we are, we then get to sit in our power and occupy space unapologetically. But when we do not know who we are, whether that leadership role is appointive, nominative, or elective, or whatever it is, oh my goodness, there's very little positive change we will create. So it first begins with knowing ourselves, and knowing self is part of leadership. So I know myself, and then I occupy power to then use that power to create change. And my quote that I'd like to share with us is by an author called Marianne Williamson in her book, A Return to Love. And it goes, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, fabulous, and talented? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. We're all meant to make manifest the glory of God that is in each and every one of us. It's not just in some of us or some women somewhere. It's in each and every one of us. As we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people around us permission to do the same. And there's nothing enlightened about shrinking in spaces so that other people can feel secure or safe around us. As we are liberated from our fears, our presence, our mere presence, the power of our presence liberates other people. So I would like to say, go out there and realize the power in who you are and in your presence, and know that you are enough, just as you are, whether with the papers, without the papers, and whatever it is. We are enough. You are enough. You're worthy. You're valuable. You're lovable. And no amount of experience, whether good or bad, can actually take away your dignity and your worth. We have that in us. Thank you.
Now we understand why she's a storyteller. Eh? She was on a roll. She was just getting into character. Because you can see she has actually, she's living that quote. Because she's not reading it. She's saying it. So if she's saying it, means she's living it. Eh? So I hope we can borrow from her.
Yes.
So our last panelist, please.
Thank you. Allow me to take a different tangent a little bit. A quote I heard a long time ago, it was in a movie, many decades ago, well, a couple of decades ago. It said, the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. And to me, and I think it's appropriate because here we are the women, and women give birth, and women traditionally is the hand that rocks the cradle. We nurture children. We raise children. And that's our very first leadership role, if from that perspective of being a parent. So it's not a question of do you have the power or are you the leader? I think both come together in that situation. We give values, we raise, we nurture, we bring up men and women, boys and girls. And something that always fascinated me is, when did we lose that? And where does it disappear into? And it's a question, I continue to look at, but we are the hand that rocks the cradle. And therefore, we should have the leadership and the influence for those who go and lead the world. So that was a context I wanted to give. Leadership and power, two different things. I think power is associated, especially when you sit with corporates, with position and title. Anyone who's ever dealt with a union or a big group of people and seen the people who have influence, not the office bearers, not necessarily even the shop stewards. They are people in your spaces, in your organizations, that will hold a position and will say something and people listen to them. And the question is, where do they get that? Without title. And it's very true in the corporate space. When you sit at a certain level, so I left my first set of employment. I was the HR director of Safaricom. And I chose to go back and go into consultancy. And the difference in life and what the power gives you, I had a parking space, we had a private elevator, I walked into an office that had everything done. And you call and say, it's the HR director of Safaricom, and doors open, appointments are held. Then you start your own consultancy nobody's ever heard of. You open the door yourself, you're the cleaner, you open the windows, you serve the tea. And then you ask for appointments and 3 green apples. Are you an orchard? Are you a gardening firm? Who are you? And it's very direct, that ability for that name and that position to show power. The challenge is to be so good at what you do that nobody can ignore you, no matter what your title is. In fact, put yourself first, and then the organizations you work for benefit from having you. And then you're you. And so it isn't a matter of, I have leadership to get the power. It's the default, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the position. And as leadership, we all have leadership in spaces that we're in. We just need to identify where they are and who they impact. And the thing about leadership, it can be positive or negative. And sometimes we always defer that it will be positive. If you look at some of the leaders in the world, take the name Hitler. He was a leader. Positive, negative. So leadership is something I think we all have in us. I think we all practice, especially if you run a home. There are people who work in your home, you lead them. You work in a community, you live in a community, we lead them. So maybe sometimes it's the definition. And I like what the last senior counsel said, it starts with the language. How do we apply and interpret that language? Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. I think that concludes our session. I'm just going to, as we conclude, say something close to what one of our panelists said about leadership and power. So all of us, I want to give ourselves an assignment. This is from a borrowed testimony from a someone who was a politician, very high up there in government. He was, I think, to CS level. The regime, the regimes changed and the job was dropped. So remember what I was saying, what are you without your title? So he was sharing and saying when he was the CS, his phone was always ringing. Actually, the problem was how to control the calls and how that's why they have the PAs and everyone to keep, so that only certain people have access. And as our panelist here has said, you have a private this, you have a private this, you have a driver, you have the lift. Government, you even have your own lift with the red carpet. There's always someone seated in that lift. I don't know what they do, but there's always someone going up and down in the lift. So the politician said, the minute he lost that title, the phone calls stopped. To the point that he was worried if the phone was faulty, because no calls were coming. And the reality hit him. People were looking for him because of the position. And the lesson he learned was, so he didn't make any impact. Because if you make an impact, the phone calls will keep coming. Because people will not look at your title. They'll remember what our panelists have said. How did you impact them? How did you influence them? So they will look for you because of who you are, not what you are. So I think that's one of the lessons we can learn from this panel discussion. And thank you for listening to us. Asanteni.